Please get on your feet and give them a warmest applause to Carolina Brochado. All right, welcome. How many times have you been welcomed on stage as a rock star?
This is amazing. I know what I'm going to do tomorrow. It won't be the same.
They didn't welcome you as a rock star in the Startup Grind conference in London last week?
It was great, but I don't think it was quite the same.
Actually, so Carolina and Luciana from Excel Partners, they had this kind of like a panel. We usually don't do panels at Startup Grind because we believe like one-on-one we can get more, we can squeeze out more like the wisdom of our speakers. But they've known each other for 15 years. They're really good friends, and they are in competing businesses, right? Excel and Atomico. And one of the questions, obviously obligated, was like, how do you do it? How do you keep the friendship with one of your best friends and actually compete for the same deals?
So first I want to give a shout out to the Hoyas because we're the Georgetown students.
Yeah.
Because Luciana and I are both went to Georgetown, and we've been friends for 15 years, and we met at Georgetown. And the answer I give, I think that, we're very conscious that Europe is tremendously underfunded versus the US. There's 14 times less capital at a Series B for an European entrepreneur versus an American entrepreneur. And so actually we don't view it as competition. We think it's very healthy for the ecosystem to have players that can write large checks, that can help founders grow their businesses, as opposed to selling them early on because they don't think they'll be able to make the next funding. And we think that it'll lead to bigger outcomes in Europe and the maturity of many ecosystems. So we try to work together.
Yeah. Well, you try to complement each other, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that actually I asked this question and you very politely answered, Luciana passed on it. I was like, what's the deal that you regret the most not having taken, not having invested in?
Yeah. So my answer there was, our firm looked at Airbnb when, sort of early days, and we passed because we thought the valuation was too high, and how big could a business actually be where people are just sharing their homes, right? There's lots of those stories and lots of those examples, and I think that as VCs is one of our biggest fears, is to miss these amazing outcomes. And so we force ourselves constantly to think outside of the box and to think about crazy ideas. Atomico was founded on the back of Skype, and Skype at the time people thought was insane. How could you have free international phone calls? And so these are the things that we always try to push ourselves to think about.
Are you actually trying to invest in these companies that you go and say, like, this is never going to work? Like Airbnb or probably Skype or Casa at the beginning, because Nicholas founded them?
A lot of it comes down to the entrepreneur, right? Especially when you're investing early on, the entrepreneur themselves, the founder, and then the team, right? You can tell a lot by a founder, given the quality of the team that they're able to attract and to hire. And then it's about the strategy and the plan, how well fleshed out that is, early day traction. So for Atomico, we like to invest at Series A and Series B stage. We like there to be a product and early day signs of product market fit, and that's kind of how we make our judgment. But equally, we also have, a thought process and thesis around things that could be game changing. So, recently we invested in a business, it's a Munich-based business, and what they're doing is they're working on electric flying vehicles. And they take, vertical liftoff, so you wouldn't need, a runway or an airport, and they're going to be eco-friendly because they're electric, and it could completely change, transportation. And there's lots of reasons why that's, something that lots of people would say is crazy, but we also believe that we have to think outside of the box, and there's no reason why the next company, let's say analogous to a Tesla, couldn't come from Europe, and, we want to be a part of that.
Actually, I just wanted to ask, there's a lot of VCs lately, a lot of funds that have been created in the last 2-3 years. It's not even funny, we cannot count them. So I perceive somehow that Atomico has got this fresher look, probably because you communicate differently, you've got a different image and social networks, you actually have got a presence, whereas some other VC funds are non-existent on social networks. What else do you do to differentiate from the rest?
So what we tried to do is, I think Europe was a little behind in the relationships between investors and entrepreneurs. And I think we still feel that sometimes when you walk into the room and people feel like VCs are like the wolves that want to, just completely destroy a startup, right? And we don't like that. We feel very privileged to work at the cutting edge. We feel very privileged to work with amazing founders. And we want to bring more to the table than just capital, and we think capital is different. And so some of the things we've done, as an example, is we've built out a team of operators who work at Atomico, who have worked at companies like Facebook, Google, Uber, at the times when these companies were experiencing hypergrowth, and led teams, right? So one of the guys was head of EMEA for talent, for Google. He took it from 60 people in Europe to 6,000 people.
Wow.
He did the same at Cisco. He did the same at Skype. We also have a guy who was head of international for Uber. When Uber was only in the US and Canada, he scaled Uber through 52 countries. And so he helps with scaling. And so these are the kinds of people that a very young startup doesn't have access to necessarily, and are obviously too expensive to hire. And they can use those people as sounding boards, they can run workshops, they can have direct access to some of those learnings and some of those best practices.
All these operations team are working full-time for Atomico? Because sometimes in some VCs, the operations team, first of all, might be non-existent, because they might just bring in some money. And some of them are kind of like mentors or some operations, but they are not full-time, so not really committed, and you see them once a month, and you need to explain them again what your project is about. So this is probably something that differentiates you as well. I just wanted to ask, what kind of deals are you investing in the last year? Because you guys seem to have turned your heads to Spain, for instance. You've been investing in OnTrack recently, and then Job and Talent last year. So what kind of deals are you looking for, or maybe that we can actually provide some insight from the audience?
Yeah, of course. So we invest, again, at Series A and Series B, and this can vary for a company, but what that really means is there's a product and there's early days of product market fit. So there's signs that there is demand for whatever product that is. We are sector agnostic, so we invest across sectors, from everything to B2C, B2B, healthcare, financial services, any large sector that has a very smart founder, entrepreneur with lots of tenacity and a great team trying to disrupt it. In terms of check size, people often ask, our sweet spot is anywhere between 5 million to 25 million. And you can think of that over the lifetime of a business. So for Series A, it can be a smaller check, but then we'll continue to support the company, throughout its journey. And we are really focused on Europe. So we expect that most of our fund will be invested in Europe. We think all the countries are kind of, treated the same, but, I think Spain, and I cover Spain, which is why I'm here, and I led the OnTrack deal, which we just announced last month, has tons of potential. There's amazing tech people in Spain. There's incredible entrepreneurs with a ton of experience, and you can tell it's a maturing ecosystem. So you've seen people have success, come back to the ecosystem. As you mentioned, there's lots of new funds in Spain that are entrepreneur funded, entrepreneur who had nice exits, or entrepreneurs who are angel investing in companies. So in OnTrack, there's quite a few entrepreneurs on that cap table. And that's cool to see and to be a part of.
Let's be more specific about this, because you reside in London and then you kind of like manage Spain. I know there's another partner of Atomico in Spain, but what are the differences and what are the similarities between the ecosystems in both countries? Like what would be like Barcelona ecosystem, what would stand out, for instance, for you guys?
Barcelona versus Madrid, or
versus London?
Versus London, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't care about Madrid. We're in Barcelona. Let's talk about it.
Very sensitive. there was a time, if you look 10 years ago, when a lot of Europe was, or even 5 years ago, was UK and Germany, right? And when you look at capital invested, that was the majority of capital invested was in UK and Germany. So by definition, those are the most mature ecosystems. The more money has gone in there, more startups have been founded, more exits. But what we've seen is that there's been a rise of the rest over the last few years. And so actually funding outside of UK and Germany has outpaced the investment in UK and Germany. And now there's more funding going into other regions than there is actually going into UK and Germany. Because other ecosystems are maturing. And I think as an example with Spain, what's happening is talent is coming back home, right? People who are having exit are reinvesting back in Spain. And you lived abroad, you lived in Germany, you're back. And so I think that those are the things that success generates success, and we can see that. It brings more capital, it brings more knowledge, it attracts more people. And we see that cycle now is happening in Spain.
I actually wanted to say, because some of the biggest or best performance startups here, they have been breaking the rules of entrepreneurship, right? The rules of entrepreneurship are don't make companies or don't fund companies with your spouse or with your best friends, or don't be a solopreneur. Don't create a company if you guys are 4 guys and all have the same profile, or you don't have expertise in your field. But they're just killing it here. So you as a VC, do you immediately discard them? Like, do you see a red flag when something like this happens in the pitch deck or of some company? Or do you want to know more about it?
If someone's breaking the rules?
Yeah, kind of like, oh, he's a solo founder or something, or they are friends making a company. So would you actually invest in them, or?
Look, I think that most successful companies are created because people broke the rules, right? People are doing things one certain way, and then someone comes across and rethinks it, and they're like, well, you had a landline, and then someone was like, well, you should have a cell phone, and then, Steve Jobs were like, well, it should be a smartphone, and it should be a little computer. I mean, that's the beauty of innovation, right? And that's really, we look for people who don't think linearly. They think like that, right? Which, by the way, I think was a terrific point, which is that's how the trajectory of a startup is as well.
Exactly.
And I think there's this huge, creating a great team is part of that too, right? Is kind of having that person that has the innovation, that wants to push forward, that's always kind of pushing the line, and then having people around them who have really good domain expertise and can sort of hone that in some sort of way so that it doesn't fall apart, right, as it grows very quickly.
Some VC funds have, their relationships here and there, and they try to invest in really complementary startups, sometimes even the same kind of startup, because, if it doesn't work for this one, it's going to work for that one. Do you guys do that one, or do you have exclusivity on the sector or the business model that some startup has?
Yeah. So for the most part, we like to pick the winners, right? We like to pick the people who are going to be number one. Obviously, you're investing so early that sometimes you don't pick the right winners. Mm-hmm. We have a huge commitment to our entrepreneurs. And so we would never invest in someone who would be competitive without talking to those entrepreneurs first and having that conversation. And then, because we are sector agnostic and we invest in multiple sectors, we aren't really boxed out of things, right, very easily. So it's not like we have, say, a fintech-focused fund, and we have to invest in 5 payments companies so we can deploy enough capital. We can always go and pick a different sector. But for us, the most important is to care about the entrepreneurs that we already have, right?
All right, let's get into detail with OnTrack, for instance, because you have led this investment, and maybe you can explain to us what kind of company it is, because probably most of you guys will not know about OnTrack, and what did you see in them? What were the metrics that you were really impressed by, or what were you fascinated by, actually?
Yeah, of course.
OnTrack.
And so with OnTrack, I think, again, if you go through the sort of different things that we look at, right? You look at the team. It's an incredibly accomplished team. Inigo, who's the founder and the CEO, is a multiple-time founder. He was one of the co-founders of La Nevera Roja, so he's had an exit, he's had a bumpy ride. His co-founder actually now is the founder of Samaipata Ventures, which is invested in OnTrack, which we view as a vote of confidence. Samuel Fuentes is their CTO. He used to be the VP Eng at Delivery Hero. So he's the example of a Spaniard who gained experience somewhere else, scaled a marketplace, and then is back home and is hiring amazing people. He has a great thought process about diversity and engineering teams, different with people with different backgrounds. When you look at the team, all in all, they're investing in talent. They really believe in that. They're very tenacious. And they know how hard it is to scale a marketplace as well, which is really important, having come from that marketplace background. When you look at the sector, it's absolutely huge, right? It's like moving goods from A to B is incredibly costly. It's opaque. No one understands how the pricing works. And it's still done by phone over fax, right? So it just makes sense that experience will be digitized and the utilization will be increased. So most trucks actually drive back empty. And so if you think about the cost of the trucker of driving back empty and the cost of the environment of those emissions that are happening without a load, there's a lot that technology can do there to make everything, better.
Actually, one thing that you and I have got in common, you as an investor, I as a service provider, is that we can see how the market develops, because you told me we've seen this coming because there's a lot of people raising funds for this specific sector. We in my company, we receive lots of requests for companies like OnTrack to develop their platform. In the span of 6 months, we got like 3 or 4 requests. Like, this is going to be something big in the short future, right? So do you think that as a VC, you're able to forecast the future, actually, to see, like, this technology is going to be, like, going off the roof in 6
I
months'
wish,
time?
right?
Yeah. Well, like, I'm seeing the technology, yes, not which company, right?
I think at the end of the day, product is incredibly important, but the most important is people.
Yeah.
Because it is, navigating the fog, or, as the founder of Waze says it, it's the desert. Mm-hmm. And it takes a certain kind of personality and a certain kind of team that, having the product is one thing, but reacting to how the market, deals with that product, commercializing that product, scaling that product, all the difficult decisions that people make are people decisions. And so it's trying to understand at first if people have what it takes. That is the difficulty of what we do.
Which other sectors can we expect to go boom in the next 6 months, 12 months? What do you see it's going to be the future, the immediate future?
Of course. I think there's disruption across. I think healthcare is really interesting right now. I know that there was someone that's building a genetics company. Yeah. I think that the intersection of science and technology is going to be huge. I think it's only the beginning for that, and there's so much benefit that can come from people working on that space. I think there's not have been enough disruption in food. And so if you think about, lots of people are still going hungry. Most people are moving to cities. All the different eco effects that there are for feeding people meat and all these sorts of things. There's a huge problem there that's kind of yet to be tech undisrupted. So I think those are there's so many sectors, but if I had to pick 2, I'd say those are top of my mind, at least in terms of what comes next. What
happens with food? Actually, you saw like 2-3 years back here in Barcelona, there's a huge amount of startups created around, food wasting and food recycling and this and that, yet no one wanted to invest in these ones. Probably because they don't make profit to any industry, they're just for the greater good. And investors don't think it's like, oh, we cannot make profit out of that. Do you think that's a valuable reason not to invest in a startup?
Well, the difficulty is that, people need to see return, right?
Absolutely.
That's part of our mission. That's a key part of our mission to our LPs. But I think the sectors that are toughest to disrupt, which are sectors like healthcare, financial services, food, are the sectors that have the most value. But they're just behind, right? They take more time for you to get there. But, it's a tremendous pain point, and someone will solve it.
And actually, how do you overcome when there's a tremendous amount of regulations? Because if you need to deal with food, like touch it, prepare it, everything, you need to have so many certifications. It's not even funny, right? Same with health. I'm not even going to start talking about it. So how do you actually perceive a startup as being like, oh, they can make it, even though it's exactly super regulated?
Yeah.
How do you help them in this case?
Lots of regulations still forming, right? Yeah. And I think the really smart entrepreneurs can navigate that and can arbitrage that very cleverly. And then the even smarter ones work with, they work with the lobbies, they work with the regulator to help shape that. I think it's a lot of what the fintech guys have done in the UK is really worked with the FCA to come to form some of the policy and try to make them think about, how this could just really disrupt the world. And in the long term, regulation actually can be a huge barrier to entry. So if you're able to use that to your advantage, it can be immensely valuable.
There's one thing that fascinated me from Atomico is they've got this, it's kind of like a blog, but they post some slides every 2 weeks, if I remember correctly, Atomico knows. And I was reading it, it's kind of like a digest of what's going on in terms of investment and regulations. It was really interesting. One of the things that really struck me is that China, last year alone, they made 29 investments in the US market, amounting to $36 billion. And most of them, they had to do with artificial intelligence. And the US has blocked China from investing in this because obviously artificial intelligence has got some military uses. So do you actually see that big investments can mold the political relationships between countries? And if so, how do you operate as a external party?
Yeah, look, I think that in the last century, right, governments were transforming the way we lived. And no doubt, we believe that now entrepreneurs are going to be the key drivers of change, right? It's going to be the entrepreneurs of our time that are shaping how we live. Transportation with the Ubers, right? The smartphone, everything evolving. This is all driven by entrepreneurs. And so what entrepreneurs do with AI and machine learning, that will ultimately transform how we live. And so it's going to affect the government because the government's no longer at the forefront of all this innovation and all this transformation. And by the way, the immense amounts of capital that are going behind, funding these things. So how they react is going to be interesting to follow.
Do you actually help your startups to overcome these regulations? For instance, like I'm thinking of things like Uber or some other disruptions where the governments don't even have a legislation for that, right?
Yeah.
So they're trying to, first thing they do is to block whatever thing it's got to do with whatever, blockchain, for instance, right? Or fintech or crowd lending, whatever. So do you actually have got experts in your team of operations that will counsel them on a ground basis in every country? How do you do it in Atomico?
Yeah, it's very much part of our DNA because if you think about the story of Kazaa and Skype,
absolutely,
regulation had a lot to do with that. So we know people who have worked with us for a long time who can help our founders deal with those issues well before they arise. We also have people on the team that are really strong when thinking about branding and comms. And so, it's very important to think proactively about these things and engage with them way before they happen. Because once they do, it's almost a little bit too late.
All right, let's talk a little bit about artificial intelligence before we go into how do you work at Atomico. So are you guys investing heavily in that? What's the latest deal you've done, or where do you see the market is going?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we don't consider it a sector per se because we think that if companies today aren't thinking about AI and machine learning, then they're just not going to survive, right? It's like a key component is to be crunching data, using that data, making better decisions from that data, and that way transforming whatever it is you're doing. So it is a sector, and it is sort of an enabler, as we view it, that we're looking for. We're just closing a deal now that is a company that's creating core technology that will help drive AI in general forward, and it's super cool, deep tech, very transformative, so, stay tuned. But it is something that undoubtedly will change things.
So how do you actually, in all these super disruptive technologies, there will be one point in which the entrepreneur coming to ask for funds, they know better than your team in-house. So how can you actually validate their idea or their technology? Yeah,
so we never are going to know what the entrepreneur's business better than the entrepreneur. That would be ridiculous for us to think that, right? The benefit we have is we see lots of businesses, we meet lots of people, and we have, been working with management teams for a long time, right? So I've been working with management teams for over 10 years, and you see how people react to different things, and you see how they fare in different ways, and that's the kind of pattern recognition that you want to achieve. Is this entrepreneur in this sector probably going to succeed or not? We will never know better than the entrepreneur what they're doing. We talk to experts, we have someone go in there and look at the technology to make sure it works, the same way that we have someone look at the books and make sure they're not cooking the numbers, right? But at the end of the day, you're making a bet on the person.
Actually, I just wanted to ask, going specifically about Barcelona, right? It's a great city to raise rounds or pre-seed money. going for an A round is relatively easy, I would say. We've seen plenty of cases, but going B, C rounds, we don't see them. Like you can count them with just one hand, right? So companies go abroad. What do we need to do in Barcelona in order to attract more B, C serious investment?
Yeah, I think that, again, it's an issue Europe-wide because I think Europe is underfunded when it comes to B+. So I think it's a question of more VCs forming, of more, pension funds putting more money into venture, more family offices coming into venture. Even if I think that the math is even if pension funds put 0.6% in venture, it would equalize as much money in Europe versus the US. So it's actually, there's a lot that could be done there. But I think what we always tell entrepreneurs is be ambitious. What we see is exits in Europe are still so much smaller than the US. And it's often because entrepreneurs get to that point and they get an offer and it's kind of in the hundreds of millions and they're kind of afraid to go for the BC, to think larger, to seek those options, and they end up selling. And we need those big exits in Europe because we need that maturity to kind of come back and breed more success into the ecosystem.
So you, as in part of Atomico, you prefer these long-term investments and in 10 years time they're going to be super big as opposed to really quick cashing?
Totally. Okay. I mean, we are long-term partners, right? Like our fund has a 10-year lifetime. I think if you look at Amazon and Google, these businesses are on 100-year plans, right? Yeah. There's an investor for every part of your journey, right? So it doesn't mean that your venture capital firm is going to be with you 100 years from now. And there will be, different investors at different points in time. But as an entrepreneur, you want to be thinking on a 100-year plan. You want to be like, I want this to be absolutely massive and transformative and super sustainable.
I don't know if any of your companies has already gone from you guys entering at like seed, then Series A, then following up on Series B, and then letting them go because you don't follow on later stages, right? If you've done it, how did you do it? And how do you perceive it? How do you feel about it? And if you haven't, how will you do it?
The following on or letting them go?
Yeah, just like letting them go because you've accompanied them to a certain stage, right?
Yeah. Look, it's a very natural, when things go well, it's very natural, right? Because different kind of investor comes in with a different risk profile, right? They're looking for a different dollar amount of return and a multiple on money, as we call it, a different return profile. They're looking for a different exit timeline. So the closer you get to maturity, people want to see the exit happen sooner as opposed to us where we can sit there for longer. But things go well and these matches kind of form because people need, the entrepreneur needs more capital, he wants to go global, these people have global platforms. I think one of the toughest parts of being a VC is when you have to have those difficult conversations, which is things aren't going so well, no one else wants to lead the next round, and now what do we do, right? Do we continue to support you, try something else, or is it time to let it go? And I think that those are the most difficult conversations.
Yeah, actually, one of our big friends here at Startup in Barcelona, Howard Love, he always says, you're never going to get rich by saying yes. You're going to get rich by saying no. When somebody comes and offers 5 million for your company, you say no. Then they come for 10, you say no. Then they come for like 20, then you say no. Then when it come like 100, it's like, yeah, I'm going to think about it, right? So you as a VC, obviously, you've got some stake in that, and you have some opinion. So how hands-on do you get in these cases when somebody approaches to buy the company you're investing in? It's like, you should take this offer, or you actually don't force them, but actually more super passionate about it?
We give advice,
okay,
right? I think that we like companies that are founder-led. As I said, we don't know better than the team what they're doing. We're not in their shoes. We're not in the business every day. So the best we can do is give our advice. We sit across. We see many businesses. We see many M&A deals. We see many fundraisings. And based on our experiences, we can input. And we have a fiduciary responsibility as board members and all these things to make sure that everyone's being taken care of. But at the end of the day, if the founder doesn't want to go along with the decision, then it's over, right? They are the heart of the business, and so you need them to want to do something, or it doesn't really matter, right? It's a non-starter.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about Atomico, how you guys operate, because I did an open call for people here and outside of the event to say, hey, Carolina wants to meet some of you. Feel free to reach out. You got some deals, like come let's say, later stages, not super pre-seed, like most of you were. And I got like 87 applications, like, okay, let's start it. So what's the best way to get in touch with a VC fund and specifically Atomico?
Yeah. So I think hopefully getting in touch is not very difficult. You know, you can reach me on my email. I try to be responsive. LinkedIn, sometimes I miss messages, although I try. And so hopefully that's not hard. I'd say that the best way to try to add a word of advice to reach a VC is a warm reference. So if you check out my LinkedIn, someone I know or you know someone I know, and they can refer you, or another founder is even stronger, then you know it makes that kind of comes up on my inbox, and I'm like, oh, this founder introduced me to this person, I should really reply, as opposed to I have to go into an email, I have to go read what you do, and then I have to, and that just takes a little bit more time. So I think a warm reference is always the best way to go.
How about when you're at events, because you've been going to some conferences, I know that you're going to speak at South Summit and other, like you were last week in London. So how about people pitching you on the corridors of an event? What's the impression that you take from this?
Look, I think it's great, right? I think we
You
go to
shouldn't
those
say
events.
that. You're going to get 110 people.
No, it's not. I don't mind.
Okay,
It's just about, you know, as an entrepreneur, it's very hard to pitch. This is what we're talking about. It's very hard to pitch your business in a minute, and then I have to ask, you know, 6 or 7 follow-up questions, and then there's 10,000 people trying to talk to me. It's just it's a very difficult, intimidating situation. But I think, you know, you get a warm reference, you set up a time. I think in lots of conferences, there's a way to set up times in advance. Mm-hmm. Every time I go to a conference, I try to have, you know, 10 or 11 meetings that I have in between if I'm speaking or whatever, or going to a dinner or something. I try to have 10 or 11 meetings, and then those are productive. Then those are like 20-minute points in time. You get to talk to the founder, you get to understand what they do, feedback, and then you know that person.
Well, if your flight isn't delayed, like today, right? Sorry about some of you guys had an appointment with her. Her flight got delayed because of the amazingly good weather that there is in London.
London can't deal with it.
London can't deal. So I just wanted to say more specifically, what's your day-to-day in Atomico? How do you operate as a partner? What does a partner do inside, and how's you're like different now than from the previous job?
Yeah, it's not that glamorous.
All right. Sounds exciting.
We are very flat actually. So you know, being a partner or being an associate, I think a big mistake that entrepreneurs make sometimes is not talking to an associate, only taking a meeting with a partner, because associates carry a tremendous amount of weight. They're meeting people constantly. You know, they feed us lots of deals all the time. If they think it's worth us meeting, we'll always take that meeting. Mm-hmm. So you know, just as another advice is if you don't treat people differently, because actually in these firms everyone kind of matters and does a lot of different things. But we're on the streets trying to meet people. We're at conferences. We're at different startups' offices. We're looking at deals. We spend a lot of time helping our portfolio companies, connecting them with people, be it on the sort of a biz dev side or on a fundraising side. So I'd say that it's almost 50-50 probably in terms of how much time we spend looking at new deals and then supporting our portfolio companies. So it's amazing. It's like really cool to work with companies that are trying to create something out of nothing.
And now that you had some, you know, banking experience in the past, and then you decided to go for an internship at Atomico.
That's not actually what happened.
Okay, what happened? Like I got that from LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You can blame it on the new design, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened actually?
So I went to Georgetown originally because I wanted to save the world, and I was in the School of Foreign Service, and I had a degree in international politics, and I worked at a few organizations while I was at school. And before then, I'd always liked trading and investing, and I actually did some public market investing. Even when I was at school, I bought some Google shares, which turned out to be not bad.
Not bad.
And so I decided that I needed to have more foundation in business, and I went in investment banking. After that, though, very quickly I moved into private equity, and then I started really working with management teams, really working within companies. Started really doing business development with a couple of our portfolio companies and seeing that technology is really where the puck was going. And so both as an investor as well as a person, I wanted to be at the forefront of what I thought was going to be pervasive across sectors. And that's when I decided to move into venture. I actually worked at a startup as well, pre-launch, only 7 people, from nothing, trying to get a product out. We launched that product. It failed. And that's, the story that got me to Atomico.
Okay, all right. Can you tell us why did it fail? And because Preston shared his, some insights into that and talking about marketing fog and some of the things that you failed because you scaled too fast and this and that, right? What was the case in your startup?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
In my startup, it was about people, to go back to sort of my thread for the evening. It came down to the founder, and at the time of raising capital, just how motivated he felt to raise that capital, and what were the other things that he was willing to do. And it came down to his decision to not raise capital, and then no one else stepped up to run the business, and so the business went away, which was less than ideal, obviously. But it was an interesting lesson in interviewing, knowing what you're getting into when you're getting into it, understanding people's motivations, and then knowing that it's a bumpy ride, right? And there's nothing wrong to saying, this isn't working, let's go do something else.
So did you actually join Atomico so that you could give them money now if somebody steps up?
No, I joined Atomico because investing suits me. So I like, the interaction with the different management teams, thinking about, I always loved asking lots of questions. I like thinking about, back to my Georgetown days, how does the macroeconomy or politics, how does that affect different businesses and what they're doing? And, in my job, I get to ask questions all day, every day. Big questions, small questions, medium-sized questions. I can trade, which I also like doing. And so it just suits my personality better. And, I'm very glad and happy to be able to do it.
Actually, I'm really thankful for you being here and for having interviewed you in London last week. And actually, I just wanted to ask, how do you guys get deal flow? Is it because you're talking in conferences? Obviously, you've got these associates because they're doing a really good job, and you've got obviously a brand. But does it help to talk in events and just be there, visible, to get more deal flow, more qualified deal flow?
Yeah, I hope so.
I hope so, okay.
We do track some of these things. I think that part of it is trying to just reach out to the ecosystem and encourage people to build amazing businesses, right? That's what we want to see. We want the best deals, but we also want great companies out of Europe. And so the more we can do to make that happen, we view that as part of our job. It's part of our brand building. So we're a company, and we're trying to build our brand. So it's part of that as well. And deal flow comes in many ways. It comes through, it's a very, as you guys are a piece of, getting up here, asking, talking about job openings, trying to help each other, trying to help the community. The VC community is very, very similar. So an investor might see a company, it might not be great for them, they'll pass it on to someone else. A founder will see a company, they'll pass it on to an investor. So it's a very tight-knit community where everyone's trying to just promote the ecosystem. And so deal flow is outbound, it's inbound, it's at conferences, there's lots of different ways where it's coming from.
One question I really like to ask about company culture, because normally we interview founders of startups, and in startups, it's easier perhaps because you need to hire developers, you need to go to market, this and that, find your business model. You already have got a business model, right? Which is investing in people. And so what's the company culture like in a VC fund?
I think that the similarity about a VC fund to a startup is that there's lots of different backgrounds, right? So there's people that come from an investing world, there's people that come from an operating world, there's people that come from an operating world with an engineering mindset. There's people who come from an operating world from a management mindset. And then you have to show performance or you're dead, right? Because we have to fundraise too. And I think in these times of change where, we're dealing with the same volatility that our startups are as a consequence, it's really important to have a strong culture. We are the way we treat the people we interact with, and that's super important because our brand is our people and how our people are interacting with the community and the entrepreneurs. And so we take our culture very seriously. We have offsites, we talk about it, we take feedback, we have our sort of Atomico values, which, is at the end of the day, our reputation is everything, right?
Can you name some of these values? Because I'm curious about it, and probably some of them come from previous experiences of Nicholas himself, right?
Yes,
can you name some of the values and see
Yeah,
share
of
with the
course.
audience?
It's things like transparency, things like humility, things like authenticity. And these are the things that we want people who interact with us, whether we invest in them or not, to say about Atomico, right? We are so proud when we hear of a founder who we've invested in who said something positive of us to another founder. Because there are really tough times, there are difficult conversations, and for people to think that, we're keeping up our responsibilities as an investor, we're being always like open and honest, which are other of the values, and transparent, then to us that's the most important.
Do you actually do these checks on the company culture of the startups you invest in as well?
Yeah, we try to sort of have some sort of NPS score for ourselves as well.
All right, let's get to tricky questions, because this is probably not an easy question, but we've seen it happening, and it's probably going to happen. It's going to burst sometime soon. There's this bubble of startup accelerators and incubators. There's just way too many, right? There's startup accelerators, incubators for pretty much everything, every niche market, every sector. But lately, we've been perceiving like they're not adding enough to the entrepreneurs they accelerate or incubate. Do you think that this is going to burst sometime soon, or how do you see the market? Is it too bloated?
I think that for us, it's always, we like to see, until there's enough capital in the ecosystem, it's hard to say that people trying to incubate companies and drive capital and drive expertise into the sector is bad. I think it's self-correcting in a sense, because if the company isn't supposed to make it for whatever reason, it's not going to make it, right? And it's going to self-correct later when that funnel tightens. And you see many entrepreneurs or many talented people on teams who have had bad experiences or failed experiences, and from those failures, they build huge successes. So I think as long as those accelerators are getting people to leave Bain, McKinsey, or Google and take a chance and take a risk, then it's hard to weigh, whether it's a good or a bad thing.
Do you think there's ever going to be a bubble for the VC market? Because we've been talking about this increasing trend of creating funds here and there. Do you think there will be way too many for not enough startups?
I hope so, almost.
All right. Can you elaborate more on that?
I think I think Europe, the entrepreneurs in Europe are hugely underfunded. So to talk of a bubble, is a little bit difficult, because valuations in Europe are much lower than the US. There's not the same access to capital. Exits are still much smaller. So to start thinking of a bubble today, I mean, in a sense, it's very difficult to see, right? I hope that we reach, the enough levels of capital so that entrepreneurs can be more ambitious and companies can be bigger. And the unfortunate truth is, if bubbles self-correct, right? So the market will correct, and they have over time. I think entrepreneurs are doing no one a favor by overvaluing a company. So for hiking up valuation to get less dilution today, because at your next round of funding, all it means is you're going to get screwed, right? Because you have to grow into this valuation before you can get to the next one.
Yep.
And our role as investors is to give that advice and to try to monitor that as well. And so I hope that the capital that comes into Europe is also responsible and thinks that way. And there are players in the US where, think that way too.
I like it because you don't give politically correct answers. And here's the next one.
I'm going to get tweeted on all this.
I know. Oh, well, this is being recorded, by the way. So there's no live streaming, though. We can apply some censorship for a fee. But just kidding. Actually, I just want to comment on this. Like, lately, I've been seeing a lot of pitch decks and this and that. And I think that the increasing trend of becoming an entrepreneur has democratized, the fact that everybody can create a startup. The same way I perceive that a lot of them, they don't have enough quality, they don't have enough drive or skills to do it. And in a sense, I think that there are more startups, but with less quality. Do you think we're getting more about the number, but not about the quality? Do you perceive that?
I don't, because increasingly I see better quality startups. Again, I think that experience, which may start off with failed experience, generates really positive outcomes if people do have that perseverance, right? And oftentimes you get asked, what makes a great entrepreneur? And it is that relentlessness, and it is that perseverance. And it's not just for the founder, it's for people on teams, right? Building startups is hard. It's shaky, it's volatile, there's scarcity of every resource. And so I think that the longer, the longer people stay in that environment, the better they get. So actually my experience has been that the quality of startups is improving, the ambition levels is improving, which is super important, and the quality of the talent is improving as well.
It's probably because the way the deals I'm trying to get, it's probably they don't make it to Series A, which is the ones that you see, right? But if you were an investor in like pre-seed or seed, would you give the same answer?
I'm not, right? So I can't speak to that.
All right, let's get into the last questions here. So, well, we're here in Barcelona. We are in 275 cities. How can we at Startup Grind help you, Carolina, and Atomico?
So I think, of course, my self-interest is send me great companies, any great founders. We're always on the lookout.
Send me money in an envelope.
Yeah. Send me, great entrepreneurs. We're always willing to meet. Great talent also. A lot of our companies, actually all our companies are always hiring. So if any of you are looking for jobs in startups, feel free to ping me. And we have a head of talent who's sort of this repository for everyone who's looking for a job and everyone who needs who's looking to hire. So, use VCs for that as well. And then help us understand how to help the ecosystem. We really want the European ecosystem to thrive. We think Spain is a massive part of that story. We've put money behind that. We want to continue putting money behind that, and it's awesome to be here and to see events like this where there's local ecosystems helping people in the local ecosystem.
Another really quick question is, normally there's not a lot of relationship between service providers and VCs because you are dealing with startups, but obviously you gotta have your providers for like contracts and like some other services, right? I've heard, and this is something I wanted to bounce off you, is VCs like to have exclusive deals. So for a service provider, is it right to approach a VC to try to have some sort of relationship with exclusivity or without it?
I can't think of a service provider where we have exclusivity outside of maybe recruiters when we do our own hiring.
Okay.
I think we have, as with anything, we have preferred partners. So there's, a law firm that I use on a lot of my deals, and it's because I really love the partner there, and he understands the way I think, and so we just work very quickly together. But it's not about the money or the fee. So I can't really think of an example.
All right, last question, and this is the trickiest one.
Yeah.
Everybody has got a useless superpower. Something you do exceptionally well, but it's completely worthless. It's useless. What is it? Something you do every day.
I can eat incredibly spicy food.
Oh wow, that's pretty useless, yeah. All right, give that one applause.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna go with the Q&A. We have like solid 20 minutes for the Q&A. So maybe Mark, you want to do the questions? Try to be very concise. Hola Jordi, ¿qué tal? It's very late. What happened, mate? Very busy entrepreneur, first time entrepreneur. All right, so say your name, be very concise. One question per person, please.
Hi, I'm Fella Hughes. To what extent do you feel obliged to support businesses beyond just the ones that are going to make you the most money?
That we invest in, that are in our portfolio.
Or put the question another way, is making money the only motivation for you to make an investment?
It is, I'll put it this way, it's a key motivation, right? And that's our fiduciary responsibility to our investors, is to make money, right? Obviously, by trying to pick the best startups. Of course, once we've partnered with a company, right, and we invested in someone, we feel responsible for what happens to that business for sure. And I do think that for a VC, that is the hardest thing. Again, as I said before, are those difficult conversations are you going to have to shut down and put, 150 people out of work tomorrow, or have you downsized enough? No one likes having those discussions.
All right, thanks. There's another one over there. Right, so it's going to take like 20 minutes to walk over there. I'm going to ask this one that actually was asked by the audience a few events ago. It's like, If you were 18 years old now, what would you tell yourself? What would you give a piece of advice to an 18-year-old Carolina?
I think about that because I have a daughter, so I'm already kind of, forming she's still a baby, but I'm still forming, the pieces of advice. But I think it would be definitely, outside of all the things that are, that are obvious, which is, go work with really smart people. I think that's something I've always prioritized, and it's always served me really well. Is always surround yourself with people you're learning from, and always, just put your head down, work really hard, learn from those people. I think one of the things that came up in the presentation before, which I think is absolutely critical, is find a mentor. I think a mentor really helps you propel yourself forward, someone you can be very honest with, failures and successes. I think that's key. And then I think in terms of sort of life trajectory, I think it is to try to be technical, right? And so get a technical degree or think about, having that ability to build something and becoming, a very well-rounded person, which is something that, I don't have.
That's good advice. All right, question over there.
Hi, Josh. Involved in various startups. We've never had to do a down round like you were talking about earlier. And I wanted to know how you would feel if you saw a business which, say, had a previous valuation of 20 million, and they came to you and you really believed in it, but actually had to go down to, say, 15 million. I was wondering if you talk about, has that ever happened? What are the implications of a down round? And then second question, if I may, you talked about from an investment point of view and getting more money into to Atomico specifically. So Octopus Ventures, as you know, they run like a venture capital trust, so individuals can invest. Is that an approach that you think Atomico would ever take? Because I personally invested in VCTs and it's fantastic. And I was wondering if that's something that Atomico would ever be open to.
All right, you get 2 questions because you introduced me to her, but let's be respectful. Thank you, Josh.
So on the first question, we have invested, yes, in companies that have been down rounds. If we have the conviction in the founder and we have conviction in the product, sometimes, pivots have to happen, right? And you may stumble across a great idea, but you might have been pursuing something else before. I think that the difficult conversation with the down rounds is just in terms of the interactions that it creates with the different stakeholders, right? So for your employees, it now means that their options might be worthless, which isn't great. For your current investors, it means that they're getting crammed in the cap table, which again creates very negative interactions. So I wouldn't say that it's an easy situation. And I'd say that oftentimes it's probably not a best indicator of success. But of course it can happen. On the second point, we love to get entrepreneurs to invest in entrepreneurs. And so when we are syndicating a deal that we might be leading, we do show that to some of the entrepreneurs we know who might be able to become investors and then provide leadership and mentoring to our companies. So I'd say that's the closest thing we do for sort of individuals investing alongside us or with our fund. And we do have entrepreneurs and angels that are investors in our fund as well, which we think is a good sign. And so those are 2 of the ways that we do it.
Great, thank you. Right, one here. It's always on the other side of the room.
Hi, I'm Andrea. What vision do you have about Bitcoin and altcoin, the cryptocurrency movement?
Yeah, so we've looked at that space for a long time. We actually don't view that the cryptocurrency aspect of it is the most interesting. We think that things like the blockchain and what it can do to certain businesses and certain services and certain processes is really, really interesting. We've seen some interesting things on the B2B side. So executing on agreements and doing it, faster and in a way that's totally, registered is really interesting. So it's definitely a space we follow closely.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Maybe we can do 2 more questions. There's one here. All right. Oh, that was here, but here.
Okay, so you mentioned health and food, and I'm currently starting a project food related. And I'm curious because you're saying that there are sectors that are a bit hard to get into because they're slowly or they've got certain issues. And food related, what do you think some of these issues might be? Why these sectors are hard to break into and they take so long for people to get involved or to have an effect?
Yeah, I think with food, there's sort of multiple subsectors in food, right? I think the first foray where a lot of capital has flown into and talent is in the distribution of food, right? And we've seen lots of companies go into the delivery space, go into the production of the meal kit space, Blue Apron IPOing, right? And I think we're going to have some successes and failures. Deliveroo's been massive in London and in Europe. We have an investment in a company called Farm Drop, which is using the supply chain to connect farmers directly to consumers. So it's kind of an ethical grocer. Those guys are awesome. And I think using that as a proxy, the difficulties there is getting to scale without spending an enormous amount of money in something that's tremendously complicated, right? There's a lot of logistics to get an awesome level of service, to get high quality, and then building a moat that is truly protected and differentiated in the long term.
So, can I have a follow-up?
Is there any other question? Or let's do it over there. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Last question. No pressure. Last question.
Okay. I think you have recommended us to have a mentor figure in case we need some advice and such, but I have been wondering all the time, who can be this mentor figure? What kind of trajectory this person has? And how do you get to know a person that can help you in such a way?
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I think if you really try to be determined about I think mentorship sometimes form naturally, right? And then that becomes very easy because it's someone you build a rapport with and they happen to want to take the time. Otherwise, seek people out that you think are inspiring and are people that have done things in their trajectory that you like and that have skill sets that you might not necessarily have or life experiences that you might not necessarily have. And seek those people out. I think you'll find that people who've had success are really open with their time. And if you build that rapport with people, they will be there for you, right? But there has to be a personal connection as well, of course.
All right. Thank you very much. I think Carolina deserves a standing applause. Everyone on their feet. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Look at that. Full house.